Thank you for calling the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Please hold for the next available representative. You may continue to wait for the next available missionary or press 1 to leave a message. You may continue to wait for the next available missionary or press 1 to leave a message.
Hi, this is Emily from Mormon.org. How can I help you today?
Hi, Emily. Thanks for taking my call. I'm a blogger online, and I do kind of comparisons and investigations of different religions. And there were some questions that came up that I kind of didn't want to listen to the critics about. I wanted to actually get information from you guys in particular. There's some basic child safety questions. It's nothing really complicated. Would it be okay if I just pose them to you and you could tell me your understanding of them?
All right. I can do that for you.
Okay.
However, I just have to say that nothing I say is actually representative of the doctrine of the church. I will try to give you the most accurate doctrine.
Sure.
And then I'll say if this is my opinion or something like that.
Okay, no, that's totally fine.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think this stuff isn't doctrinal. I think it's mostly policy-based. So the first thing is, I guess, do bishops have one-on-one interviews with kids, in a room with a closed door?
Sorry. Yes, if the parents are allowed to be in the room with the kid, if the kid doesn't feel comfortable being with the bishop, so the parents are allowed to be there.
Okay, so it sounds like the answer is yes, they do have those private interviews, but the kid, if they don't feel comfortable, can ask for their parent to come in with them. Does that summarize it well?
Right.
Okay, and what age do those interviews start?
Well, they have an interview with the bishop for their baptism, which is usually at 8 years of age.
Okay. And then do they go throughout childhood until they're 18, or is it only at 8 years old?
They have interviews throughout all the way until they're 18 for multiple reasons. There's interviews for young men to receive the priesthood. There's also interviews in general for people to receive temple recommends or temporary temple recommends, which is just to see if they're worthy to enter the temple, if they're ready.
Okay. That makes sense. Next question is, because of the visibility that things like the Catholic Church abuse scandal had, parents tend to be very concerned about whether or not conversations with adults and children would include sexual subjects. Do these interviews include conversations about sexual subjects?
They don't.
Okay. So
they have one of the questions involves what we call the law of chastity.
Okay.
which is simply to keep your body clean. But since it's with kids, we generally will just leave it at keep your body clean and worthy of feeling the Spirit in your life. We wouldn't bring that kind of thing up with children.
Okay. And is that true for 7-year-olds as well as 15, 12, 14-year-olds? They would never go into any detail?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say that we were looking at the content of an interview. How would the bishop I don't know, you mentioned something about making sure that they're worthy to go to the temple. How would the bishop broach that subject? What would, like, the question be?
So there are a few questions that are always the same, and they're generally about whether the person is keeping the commandments,
okay.
Which involves things like the law of chastity. Are you keeping the word of wisdom, which is like kind of a health code?
Okay. So
and then it also includes...
Go ahead. Hello? Hello?
Thank you for calling the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Please hold for the next available representative.
Hi, thank you for calling Mormon.org. This is Dan. How can I help you?
Hi, I was speaking with someone just a minute ago, and I think the connection broke off. I hate to start.
Okay.
I hate to start over from the beginning. I don't.
Oh yeah, it's
her
fine.
name.
So do you remember what's her name?
I don't remember her name. She
I'm
was looking
sorry,
into.
because we can just.
I can kind of summarize it. Basically, I had told her that.
Okay.
I do a blog that looks at different religions, and there was a question that came up, and I didn't want to listen to critics. I wanted to actually kind of get the information from you guys about child safety. We had discussed, there's this question of, I had asked her, do bishops have interviews with kids? And she confirmed that they do, as young as 7 years old, and that those interviews may be in private, one-on-one, but a parent is able to come in. She was able to answer that. And then we were talking about whether or not those interviews include discussions about sexual matters. And she had explained to me that for interviews for the temple to assess worthiness, the bishop asked about the law of chastity. And then it got cut off. And that's kind of where we were. I guess my question was going to be, how would a bishop ask about the law of chastity? How would that conversation go? Do they get into detail about sexual issues in these interviews?
Yeah, so I will try my very best. Sorry, what's your name again?
My name's John.
John. I will try my very best, John, to answer your question. Because I grew up in the church, and that's true. We call this interview with our bishop, but actually it's not the bishop, because sometimes the bishop will delegate responsibility to his counselors. And there will be some series of questions that they will ask the youth. Like, for me, I experience that once, twice a year when I grew up in the church. And yeah, that's one of the questions about law of chastity, but they won't ask about too personal. So sometimes I remember they would ask, do you have any boyfriend? Something like that. And I was like, yeah. I don't know. I remember that time I didn't have a boyfriend. But if you have a boyfriend, of course, you have to be honest. You have to tell them that you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And then they would ask, are you doing something that is not accordance to the law, like law of chastity? And then, of course, you have to be honest. Because, sometimes it's really important for us, members of the church, that we need to be honest, because that's the only way we can, like the bishop or the counselors can help us to become a better member of the church.
Now, I know different churches have different ideas about morality, what would constitute a violation of the law of chastity in Mormonism that in those discussions would need to be, I don't know if it's confessed or just discussed with the bishop? Like, what are some of the things? I think certainly...
wait, give me a second.
Sure. I don't want to get graphic or anything like that, just in general terms.
Sorry, can you ask me again your question, Brother
Sure.
John?
Yes.
So what are the things that we try to identify if we are violating a law?
Right.
Right?
What would be considered against the law of chastity?
So we know that family, so we have this one, proclamation to the world that was proclaimed by President Gordon Blinkley. He's talking about the family. We call it the family, a proclamation to the world. And we believe that being chaste or being pure, we need to follow that one before marriage. That we don't do some English is not my first language, but hopefully you will understand me, but I will really, really try my best to help you, Brother John. So I just want to read a verse in that proclamation to the world that proclaimed by President Gordon Blinkley. He said, "The family is ordained in God. Marriage between man and woman is essential to his eternal plan. Children are entitled to birth within the bonds of matrimony and to be reared by a father and a mother who honor marital vows with complete fidelity. And we warn that individuals who violate covenants of chastity, who abuse spouse or offspring, or fail to fulfill family responsibility will one day stand accountable before God. And further, we warn that the disintegration of the family will bring upon individuals, communities, and nations the calamities foretold by ancient and modern prophets." Does it make sense?
I think I've seen that before because I've looked at some of the church media.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How would that apply to a teenager? Like we had discussed in the call that got cut off that kids as young as 7 would have these interviews. But then I guess starting around age 11 or 12 is when they would really start to talk about the law of chastity. How does, because a lot of what you read deals with marriage, how would a 12-year-old, because I know, I don't want to get graphic or anything, but a lot of teenagers deal with moral issues. Today, I think things like masturbation and pornography are things that teenagers deal with. Are those things considered violations of the law of chastity?
Yeah, so as far as I understand your question, Brother John, so you mean that there is, for us, members of the church, that's why we have this semi-annual interview, something like that, like interview twice a year with our leaders of the church. It's not because we are giving them idea to do that. But it's just a reminder that for us, that we need to be careful, like for youth, because they're very vulnerable in everything. And we know that Satan is really like trying to destroy every family and even the children. That's why we need that interview so that we will be reminded that these things we need to be careful for these things and we should not do these things. It's not like we're not giving them idea like, hey, you should do this one, you should do that. But it's just a reminder for us that we need to be careful because we know that Satan is really, really trying to destroy all of these children, even the younger ones, because they're really, really vulnerable and they're prone to temptation. That's why we need that law or that commandment that we need to do.
That makes sense. So if I have a 12-year-old son who is masturbating, for example, and he goes for an interview, and if the bishop asks him, "Are you keeping the law of chastity?" what would he be expected to answer?
Yeah, so just like what I said, that we need to be honest. And if that your son or that child or that person is honest, then he will tell the bishop that, like, yeah, I'm doing this. But, like, all of us, we're not perfect in everything. That's why we have the process of repentance where we can change ourselves for the better, and then we try our really, really best not to do that again. Because we know it's not it's not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And then we need, as much as possible, as members of the church, we really try our best to put to be pure in thought, in deed, and in actions.
Okay.
But we don't condemn them. Like I'm not a leader. Mm-hmm.
Well, like, as I mentioned, I've
so
comparisons with religions, and so I've talked to members of several different faiths about how they deal with moral sin, and a lot of them have those same sort of ideas. Many of them have stopped having, or at least they have policies in place that are trying to be protective of children, and so they don't let leaders meet one-on-one. I'm trying to really kind of focus on that particular issue. It sounds like, from what we've discussed, leaders do meet in private with kids, and some of that discussion will include sexual matters, such as masturbation. So I guess looking at the next child safety issue would be, do these leaders, the bishops, do they have background checks or some other way, just as a minimum safety requirement, to make sure that somebody who has a history of abusing children, for example, is not put in that position? Do they get background checks?
Hi. Sorry, what is your name? John?
This is John, yeah.
John, this is Isabella. I'm Diane's companion. So actually, John, there is a lot of changes taking place in the church right now, so that nothing might look quite suspicious or something like that. And one of those changes that are actually taking place is on those interviews that the bishop has with the children and the youth. They're inviting their parents to take part in that interview too, so that they won't be alone just with the bishop.
Is that a requirement?
Is starting to take place.
That's okay. Is that a requirement?
Yeah. So it's starting to do it. It's starting to take place.
I was asking if it was just an invitation or a requirement. Because
I'm not really sure, because it's like starting to take place now. But I do know that those changes are starting to take place so that it will be best legally, and that no problems will be caused, so that the parents might feel more comfortable to really participate in those interviews, so that nothing will go wrong. So it's something that is being changed now.
Okay, that sounds like a move in the right direction. The guy who first alerted me of this issue said that they have allowed parents to be in the room or other adults, but that it's up to the child to ask for it. It's not a policy for all. And so his argument was that if it doesn't make it a policy where there's never one-on-one interviews, then that means that there still may be children at risk. Is that your understanding as well? Is that it's not for all? It's just if the child requests it.
Yeah, I know that it's still in change. So I'm not sure if it will become a policy or not. It's still moving,
Okay.
So I'm not really sure yet.
So it sounds like their policy's not finalized yet. Do you know if background checks?
Yeah, I think so.
On the question about background checks for these leaders, like even for coaches or scout-like leaders, even though they don't ever have one-on-one meetings, there's still parents required or another leader required in any meeting. For those groups, they still do background checks. Do bishops or youth leaders get background checks in the church?
To be honest, I'm not really sure. I've never tried asking, or never had someone tell me, so I'm not really sure.
So as far as you know, that's
I'm not really sure about
not
that.
a policy. How would you find the answer to that question? Because I guess that's the last question, but it's a pretty important one. I think just like if you had kids and they were going to some meeting where you knew they potentially could be in a meeting with an adult talking about sexual subjects, because it's not required that there's always two people in the room, then I think making sure that there were background checks seems like a prudent thing to do. Would you agree?
Okay. Well, we do have 2 church websites where you could maybe find information on that. Our church website is usually lds.org and mormon.org. And then within those websites, there's also a newsroom where you could find some information on that. But I'm truly not really sure because I've never tried searching about that.
Okay.
Yeah, but you could try turning to those websites and see if you find something.
No, I actually looked through those websites before I called just because, like I said before, I don't want to get my information from critics of the church. I want to try to go to you guys directly. But I couldn't find any information at all anywhere about background checks. They did talk about the policy things that you mentioned where parents can be in the room now, and that was a recent thing, I believe. But there was nothing about background.
Yeah, it's very. Oh, okay. I'm not really sure. Do you know if there's a church near to where you live?
Yeah, there is. There is one in my neighborhood.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe you could try going to that church and just asking them directly. I think that they will be able to tell you better because during intermission time we don't really have a bishop. We don't really go to the normal ward. We just have our mission president and our mission president's wife. So it's a little bit different, but you could try turning directly to them. I think that they will be able to help you better.
All right. I think that's my last major question, so I will give that a go. Thank you so much for being helpful. And I forget her name who was on before. I know she thought she was struggling with English, but she did a very good job. She was very helpful.
Diane, Brother John.
Okay. All right.
I'm so sorry with my English, but hopefully.
No, you did. You did great. I just hope you didn't feel like you needed, backup to call in.
Oh no, no worries.
All right. You guys have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Bye now.
Bye bye.